Good morning and welcome to Bible in a Year as we explore the Bible in 365 days. Today we're going to be, like as always, we go through the adventure timeline. So we took the Bible and broke it into different sections. Actually, I didn't. A man named Jeff Cavins did, and he called it the adventure timeline. And so right now we are in a period of conquest and judges. My name is Pastor Jay Lutz. Like I said, we're on day 92 of 365, and we are reading through Judges chapter 9 to 11, Ruth chapter 4, and Psalm chapter 137. A little bit about each one of these. So in Judges, in chapter 9, we see after the death of Gideon, who is also named Zerubbaal, his son Abimelech sets himself up as essentially a king. And as we've seen, there's a repeated cycle with the people of Israel. The Lord blesses them, they turn away, they worship. Tragedy befalls them, they repent, and they turn back to the Lord. He helps them, and they're restored. So we see that chapter 10 or 9 and chapter 10. Tola, son of Puah, he is another judge that leads Israel for 23 years. Then in chapter 11, we see Jephthah. One of Gilead's sons is the son of a harlot, so he's rejected by his family, but he becomes this mighty warrior. Jephthah knows that God prohibits human sacrifice, yet he makes a rash vow to God. He promises that if God gives him victory, he'll sacrifice to the Lord whoever comes out of the house when he comes back home. It's interesting to explain that heroes of the Bible can be both good and strong in some ways and foolish and unfaithful in others. This rash vow of Jephthah is an example of one that we should avoid. We should always want to make wise promises and not rash ones. And God doesn't desire the death of the living, but that all might find this fullness of life. Ruth, chapter 4, we see Boaz. He sits down with the former kinsman redeemer, which I explained yesterday. He asked whether he would want to redeem Elimelech's land and marry his widow Ruth. The man refuses the offer, and so Boaz then, in his succession, because he's the next one in line, becomes the kinsman redeemer for Elimelech's land and to marry Ruth. And then lastly, Psalm 137 is a community psalm I talked about a bit yesterday, and how but instead of being a song of praise, this is a song of petition and lament because it focuses on the traumatic experiences of exile in Babylon. Even as a kid, I remember this psalm because it was very similar to a song that my mom taught us, which I'll sing a little bit for you. It went, by the waters of Babylon, by the waters of Babylon. It was around. It had two other parts, and we'd all sing it around as a family. It's a beautiful song that I remember as a child, and this based upon this psalm. But let's get into the reading. Chapter 9 of Judges. Abimelech, son of Zerubbaal, that being Gideon, went to his mother's brothers in Shechem and said to them, and to all his mother's clan, ask all the citizens of Shechem, which is better for you, to have all 70 of Zerubbabel's sons rule over you, or just one man? Remember, I am your flesh and blood. When the brothers repeated all this to the citizens of Shechem, they inclined to follow Abimelech. For they said, he is our brother. They gave him 70 shekels of silver from the temple of Baal Berith. And Abimelech used it to hire reckless adventurers, who became his followers. He went to his father's home in Ophrah, and on one stone murdered his 70 brothers, the sons of Zerubbaal. But Jotham, the youngest son of Zerubbaal, escaped by hiding. Then all the citizens of Shechem and Beth Milo gathered beside the great tree at the pillar of Shechem to crown Abimelech king. Then when Jotham was told about this, he climbed up on the top of Mount Gerizim and shouted to them, listen to me, citizens of Shechem, so that God may listen to you. One day the trees went out to anoint a king for themselves. They said to the olive tree, "Be our king." But the olive tree answered, "Should I give up my olives, by which both gods and men are honored, to hold sway over the trees?" Next the trees said to the fig tree, "Come and be our king." But the fig tree replied, "Should I give up my fruit, so good and sweet, to hold sway over the trees?" Then the trees said to the vine, "Come and be our king." But the vine answered, "Should I give up my wine, which cheers both God and men, to hold sway over the trees?" Finally, all the trees said to the thorn bush, "Come and be our king." The thorn bush said to the trees, "If you really want to anoint me king over you, come and take refuge in my shade. But if not, then let fire come out of the thorn bush and consume the cedars of Lebanon." Now, if you have acted honorably and in good faith when you made Abimelech king, and if you have been fair to Jerubbaal, that is, Gideon, and his family, and if you have treated him as he deserves, and to think that my father fought for you, risked his life to rescue you from the hand of Midian, but today you have revolted against my father's family, murdered his 70 sons on a single stone, and made Abimelech, the son of his slave girl, king over the citizens of Shechem, because he is your brother. If then you have acted honorably and in good faith towards Zerubbabel and his family today, may Abimelech be your joy, and may you be his too. But if you have not let fire come down out from Abimelech and consume you, citizens of Shechem and Beth Milo, and let fire come out from you, citizens of Shechem and Beth Milo, and consume Abimelech. Then Jotham fled, escaping to Beer, and he lived there because he was afraid of his brother Abimelech. After Abimelech had governed Israel 3 years, God sent an evil spirit between Abimelech and the citizens of Shechem. He acted treacherously against Abimelech. God did this in order that the crime against Zerubbabel's 70 sons, the shedding of the blood, might be avenged on their brother Abimelech, and on the citizens of Shechem, who had helped him murder his brothers. In opposition to him, these citizens of Shechem set men on the hilltops to ambush and rob everyone who passed by. And this was reported to Abimelech. Now Gaal, son of Ebed, moved with his brothers in Shechem, and its citizens put their confidence in him. After they had gone out into the fields and gathered the grapes and trodden them, they held a festival to the temple of their God. While they were eating and drinking, they cursed Abimelech. When Gaal, son of Ebed, said, "Who is Abimelech and who is Shechem, that we should be subject to him? Isn't he Zerubbabel's son? And isn't Zebul his duty? Serve the men of Hamor, Shechem's father. Why should we serve Abimelech? If only this people were under my command, then I would get rid of him. I would say to Abimelech, call out your whole army." When Zebul, the governor of the city, heard what Gaal, son of Ebed, said, he was very angry. Under cover, he sent messengers to Abimelech, saying, "Gaal, son of Ebed, and his brothers have come to Shechem, and are stirring up the city against you. Now then, during the night, you and your men should come and lie in wait in the field. In the morning at sunrise, advance against the city. When Gaal and his men come out against you, do whatever your hand finds to do." So Abimelech and all his troops set out by night and took up concealed positions near Shechem in 4 companies. Now Gaal, son of Ebed, had gone out and was standing at the entrance to the city gate just as Abimelech and his soldiers came out from their hiding place. When Gaal saw them, he said to Zebul, "Look, people are coming down from the tops of the mountains." Zebul replied, "You mistake the shadows of the mountain for men." But Gaal spoke up again, "Look, people are coming down from the center of the land, and a company is coming from the direction of the soothsayer's tree." Then Zebul said to him, "Where is your big talk now, you who say, 'Who is Abimelech that he should be subject to him?' Aren't these the men you ridiculed? Go out and fight them." So Gaal led out the citizens of Shechem and fought Abimelech. Abimelech chased him, and many fell wounded in the flight, all the way to the entrance to the gate. Abimelech stayed in Arumah, and Zebul drove Gaal and his brothers out of Shechem. The next day the people of Shechem went out to the fields, and this was reported to Abimelech. So he took his men, divided them into 3 companies, and set an ambush in the fields. When he saw the people coming out of the city, he rose to attack them. Abimelech and the companies with him rushed forward to a position at the entrance to the city gate. Then 2 companies rushed upon them, those into the fields, and struck them down. All that day Abimelech pressed his attack against the city until he had captured it and killed its people. Then he destroyed the city and scattered salt over it. On hearing this, the citizens in the town of Shechem went into the stronghold of the temple of El-Berith. When Abimelech heard that they had assembled there, he and all his men went up to Mount Zalmon. He took an axe and cut off some branches which he lifted to his shoulder. He ordered the men with him, "Quick, do what you have seen me do." So all the men cut branches and followed Abimelech. They piled them against the stronghold and set it on fire over the people inside. So all the people in the tower of Shechem, about 1,000 men and women, also died. Next Abimelech went to Thebez and besieged it and captured it. Inside the city, however, was a strong tower, to which all men and women, all the people of the city, fled. They locked themselves in and climbed up on the tower roof. Abimelech went to the tower and stormed it. But as he approached the entrance to the tower to set it on fire, a woman dropped an upper millstone on his head and cracked his skull. Hurriedly he called to his armor-bearer, "Draw your sword and kill me, so that they can't say a woman killed him." So his servant ran him through, and he died. When the Israelites saw that Abimelech was dead, they went home. Thus God repaid the wickedness that Abimelech had done to his father by murdering his 70 brothers. God also made the men of Shechem pay for all their wickedness. The curse of Jotham, son of Zerubbabel, came on them. Chapter 10. After the time of Abimelech, a man of Issachar, Tola, son of Puah, the son of Dodo, rose to save Israel. He lived in Shamir, in the hill country of Ephraim. He led Israel 23 years. Then he died and was buried at Shamir. He was followed by Jair of Gilead, who led Israel 22 years. He had 30 sons who rode 30 donkeys. They controlled 30 towns in Gilead, which to this day are called Havoth Jair. When Jair died, he was buried in Kamon. After the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, they served the Baals and the Ashtoreths, and the gods of Aram, the gods of Sidon, the gods of Moab, the gods of the Ammonites, the gods of the Philistines. And because the Israelites forsook the Lord and no longer served him, he became angry with them. He sold them into the hands of the Philistines and the Ammonites, who that year shattered and crushed them. For 18 years they oppressed all the Israelites on the east side of the Jordan in Gilead, the land of the Amorites. The Ammonites also crossed the Jordan to fight against Judah, Benjamin, and the house of Ephraim. And Israel was in great distress. Then the Israelites cried out to the Lord, "We have sinned against you, forsaking our God and serving the Baals." The Lord replied, "When the Egyptians, the Amorites, the Ammonites, the Philistines, the Sidonians, the Amalekites, and the Maonites oppressed you, and you cried to me for help, did I not save you from their hands? But you have forsaken me and served other gods, so I will no longer save you. Go and cry out to the gods you have chosen. Let them save you when you are in trouble." But the Israelites said to the Lord, "We have sinned. Do with us whatever you think best, but please rescue us now." Then they got rid of the foreign gods amongst them and served the Lord, and he could bear Israel's misery no longer. And the Ammonites were called to arms and camped in Gilead. The Israelites assembled camp at Mizpah. The leaders of the people of Gilead said to each other, "Whoever will launch the attack against the Ammonites will be the head of all those living in Gilead." Chapter 11. Jephthah, the Gileadite, was a mighty warrior. His father was Gilead. His mother was a prostitute. Gilead's wife also bore him sons, and when they were grown up, they drove Jephthah away. "You are not going to get any inheritance in our family," they said, "because you are the son of another woman." So Jephthah fled from his brothers and settled in the land of Tob, where a group of adventurers gathered around him and followed him. Some time later, when the Ammonites made war on Israel, the elders of Gilead went to get Jephthah from the land of Tob. Come, they said, be our commander, so we might fight the Ammonites. Jephthah said to them, didn't you hate me and drive me from my father's house? Why do you come to me now when you're in trouble? The elders of Gilead said to him, nevertheless, we are turning to you now. Come with us to fight the Ammonites, and you will be our head over all who live in Gilead. Jephthah answered, suppose you take me back to fight the Ammonites, and the Lord gives them to me. Will I really be your head? The elders of Gilead replied, the Lord is our witness. We will certainly do as you say. So Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead. And the people made him head and commander over them. And he repeated all his words before the Lord in Mizpah. Then Jephthah sent messengers to the Ammonite kings with the question, what do you have against us that you have attacked our country? The king of the Ammonites answered Jephthah's messengers, when Israel came up out of Egypt, they took away my land from the Arnon to the Jabbok, all the way to the Jordan. Now give it back peaceably. Jephthah sent messengers back to the Ammonite king, saying, this is what Jephthah says. Israel did not take the land of Moab or the land of the Ammonites. But when they came up out of Egypt, Israel went through the desert to the Red Sea and on to Kadesh. And Israel sent messengers to the king of Edom, saying, give us permission to go through your country. But the king of Edom would not listen. They sent also the king of Moab, and he refused. So Israel stayed at Kadesh. Next they traveled through the desert, skirted the lands of Edom and Moab, passed along the eastern side of the country of Moab, and camped on the other side of Arnon. They did not enter the territory of Moab, for the Arnon was its border. Then Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who ruled in Heshbon, and said to him, let us pass through your country to our own place. Sihon, however, did not trust Israel to pass through his territory. He mustered all his men and encamped at Jahaz and fought with Israel. Then the Lord, the God of Israel, gave Sihon and all his men into Israel's hand, and they defeated them. Israel took over all the land of the Amorites who lived in the country, captured all of it, from the Arnon to the Jabbok, and from the desert to the Jordan. Now since the Lord, the God of Israel, has driven the Amorites out before his people Israel, what right have you to take it over? Will you not take what our god Chemosh gives you? Likewise, whatever the Lord our God has given us, we will possess. Are you better than Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab? Did he ever quarrel with Israel or fight with them? For 300 years Israel occupied Heshbon, Aroer, and the surrounding settlements, and all the towns along the Arnon. Why didn't you retake them during that time? I have not wronged you, but you are doing me wrong by waging war against me. Let the Lord the judge decide the dispute this day between the Israelites and the Ammonites. The king of Ammon, however, paid no attention to the message of Jephthah sent him. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon Jephthah. He crossed Gilead and Manasseh, passed through Mizpah of Gilead, and from there he advanced against the Ammonites. And Jephthah made a vow to the Lord, if you give the Ammonites into my hands, whatever comes out of the door of my house to meet me when I return in triumph from the Ammonites will be the Lord's, and I will sacrifice as a burnt offering. Then Jephthah went over to fight the Ammonites, and the Lord gave them into his hands. He devastated 20 towns from Aroer to the vicinity of Minnith, and as far as Abel Keramim. Thus Israel subdued Ammon. When Jephthah returned to his home in Mizpah, who should come out to meet him but his daughter, dancing to the sounds of tambourines? She was an only child. Except for her, he had neither son nor daughter. When he saw her, he tore his clothes and cried, "O my daughter, you have made me miserable and wretched because I have made a vow to the Lord that I cannot break." "My father," she replied, "you have given your word to the Lord. Do to me just as you promised. Now that the Lord has avenged you of your enemies, the Ammonites. But grant me this one request," she said. "Give me 2 months to roam the hills and weep with my friends, because I will never marry." "You may go," he said. And he let her go for 2 months. She and the girls went into the hills and wept because she would never marry. After 2 months she returned to her father, and he did to her as he had vowed, and she was a virgin From this comes the Israelites' custom that each year the young women of Israel go out for 4 days to commemorate the daughter of Jephthah, the Gileadite. Here ends our first reading. Our second reading comes from the book of Ruth, the 4th chapter. Meanwhile, Boaz went up to the town gate and sat there. When the kinsman redeemer had mentioned came along, Boaz said, "Come over here, my friend, and sit down." So he went over and sat down. Boaz then took 10 of the elders of the town and said, "Sit here." And they did so. Then he said to the kinsman redeemer, "Naomi, who came back from Moab, is selling the piece of land that belongs to our brother Elimelech. I thought I should bring the matter to your attention and suggest that you buy it in the presence of these seated here, in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, do so. But if you will not, tell me, so I might know. For no one has the right to do it except you, and I am next in line." "I will redeem it," he said. Then Boaz said, "On the day you buy the land from Naomi and from Ruth the Moabitess, you acquire the dead man's widow in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property." At this time the kinsman redeemer said, "Then I cannot redeem it, because I might endanger my own estate. You redeem it yourself. I cannot do it." Now in earlier times Israel, for the redemption and transfer of property to become final, one party took off his sandal and gave it to the other. This was the legal method of legalizing transactions in Israel. So the kinsman redeemer said to Boaz, "Buy it yourself." And he removed his sandal. Then Boaz announced to the elders and all the people, "Today you are a witness that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Chilion, and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabitess, Mahlon's widow, as my wife, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from amongst his family or from the town records. Today you are witnesses." Then the elders and all those who gathered at the gate said, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel. May you have standing in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem. Through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez, who Tamar bore to Judah." So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. Then he went to her, and the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. The woman said to Naomi, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a kinsman redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you, and who is better than 7 sons, has given birth." Then Naomi took the child, laid him in her lap, and cared for him. The women living there said, "Naomi has a son," and they named him Obed. For he was the father of Jesse, the father of David. This then is the family line of Perez. Perez was the father of Hezron, Hezron the father of Ram, Ram the father of Amminadab, Amminadab the father of Nahshon, Nahshon the father of Salmon, Salmon the father of Boaz, Boaz the father of Obed, Obed the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of David. Here ends our second reading. And lastly, Psalm 137. By the rivers of Babylon we sat and wept when we remembered Zion. There on the poplars we hung our harps, for there our captors asked us for songs. Our tormentors demanded songs of joy. They said, "Sing us one of the songs of Zion." How can we sing the songs of the Lord while in a foreign land? If I forget you, O Jerusalem, may my right hand forget its skills. May my tongue cling to the roof of my mouth. If I do not remember you, I do not consider Jerusalem my highest joy. Remember, O Lord, what the Edomites did on the day Jerusalem fell. Tear it down, they cried, tear it down to its foundation. O daughter of Babylon, doomed to destruction, happy is he who repays you. For what have you done to us? He who seizes your infants and dashes them against the rocks. Here ends the reading. This is a little bit sadder of a psalm. Like I said, this is a community song, one talking about the exile in Babylon. But remember that at the very beginning, it says, when we, by the rivers of Babylon, we sat and wept when we remembered Zion. And I love this verse 6. May my tongue cling to the roof of my mouth if I do not remember you, if I do not consider Jerusalem my highest joy. Even in their sorrow and pain, they remember the highest joy, that of Jerusalem, that being with their Lord God. And there's both a mixed emotion here, both lament and praise. We should always remember that in our sorrow, that there's always praise within our laments. And secondly, we talk about this kinsman redeemer, Boaz, and him redeeming Ruth and marrying, and him being the father of David, the future father of King David. This is a beautiful story of redemption and joy. And then we see with Judges, we see Abimelech in this really crazy story of him killing 70 of his brothers, those who were Gideon's children. And then we see this prophecy by his brother who shouts on the rooftop, Jotham. And this becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that, or I guess not just self-fulfilling, God-fulfilled property, in which we hear he eventually does die by getting, we see this millstone dropped upon him. Remember, Jesus says a little bit about a millstone being tied around a neck and thrown into the sea. This is partly where that idea comes from. And then we see the reign of two others. We see the reign of Tola, son of Pua, for 23 years, and then Jephthah, the son of Gilead. And he makes, like I said, he makes this promise that he should never have spoken of. Be careful, people, about the words that you speak and the things you put into action, that you don't say things rashly. May you ever think of God. My prayer today is that you might think of me and pray for me as we go through this Bible year, and as I pray for you, that you might grow in the fear and wisdom of the Lord our God. Have a blessed day.